Zoom recording, great. Okay. So, like I said, moving from the whole arm to more coordinated movements with the arm, then the whole hand grasp to this kind of grasp to this kind of grasp. All right. The reason, or one of the reasons, aside from growing control coming from the inside out, is that the wrist contains some cartilage that will not harden into bone until about age 6. So that places some constraint on fine motor capacity as children are developing. Most preschoolers cannot make a full circular motion even at that point. So for them to get that really fine motor control, it is a project in the making. All right, to promote fine motor development, provide lots of open-ended experiences. Does anybody remember what open-ended means in the context of this class? We talked about open-ended materials. Does anybody remember what open-ended is? The opposite of it is a closed material. Okay, Jasmine said less directed. Okay, thank you, Jasmine. Does anybody else have something they'd like to toss in the ring for that?
Open-ended is like you can do many things with that that one object.
Yeah, so both of you are right. It is less directed. There are many ways to use it. I have here in front of me one of my favorite open-ended materials, which is all my yarn leavings from crocheting. I collect them because I'm an early childhood person and that's what we do. But for example, if you were working with some toddlers, you could put this out even in a sensory basket for them to mess with. Or you could, for a gluing activity, put a little pile out on a tray and then watch them carefully because these are choking hazards. But they could use their either this kind or this kind of movement to pick a string apart and be able to put it down where they want it. So that's open-ended. A closed, can anybody give me an example of a closed fine motor activity, a closed-ended? There's only one right way to do it. Can anybody give me an example of a closed activity, a fine motor one? So having to do with the hand and the arm, an activity that there's only one right way to do it. Think about the materials in your classroom. Are there materials that there's only one right way to make them work?
Like puzzles? Can puzzles be one?
It definitely is. So puzzle, in general, puzzles only have one hole that piece will go in and fit. So that is a one right way. Think about two different kinds of blocks also. So some blocks are smooth on all sides and flat on all sides. So you can stack them different ways. Does everybody agree with me on that? That's open-ended, right? You can stick it together any way you want. It only depends on gravity. Other kinds of blocks that are more confined in how they can be used are Duplos, Legos, you know, that you can only connect them together from the pegs from one to another. Those linking rings, there's only one way to connect them together. So they're not as open as the blocks that are flat all the way around. They're still a good material, but it's good to know that you need variety from closed all the way to open. All right, let children choose activities and tools that match their skills. So you would have in your classroom a variety of materials. So let's say you have blocks or puzzles. If you're in a infant classroom, you would have probably like 2-piece or 3-piece puzzles with that nice big peg on piece that the baby can pick up easily and move. You might have 5-piece puzzles without a peg on it for your babies that have finer motor control. And that's okay. That's great. They can choose what level of difficulty they want to play with. Offering materials to explore and manipulate. That's the same as the other one. Provide vertical surfaces for scribbling, drawing, and writing. So I'm going to turn around. You can see I have an easel here, which is pretty much a vertical surface. So vertical is up and down, like a wall is a vertical surface. This easel, vertical surface. Why do you think, when we know that children develop the whole arm before they develop their fingers, why might it be good to use a vertical surface? What do you think? Why is that better when they're developing the whole arm? Amber says so they can gain control. This is really good practice, isn't it? You see I have a paintbrush in my hand. And since it's vertical on the wall, do you see the movement I'm having to make with my arm in order to make these strokes? It's a whole arm movement. When you put something on the table in front of them, it's a much more controlled movement and they're not using the whole arm. Do you see the difference? So it's nice to be able to have places where they can do whole arm movements. Am I telling you, you have to set up an easel on your wall where the kids can run around the room painting like this? No, I am not, though that would be fun. You can take a bucket of water outside, let the kids carry their little bucket, give them a paintbrush, put some water, maybe like an inch of water in it, let them dip their paintbrush in the water and they can paint the walls of the school, they can paint the playground equipment, and they're still getting this whole arm movement. All right. Include natural opportunities to develop fine motor skills. So let's see, natural versus contrived. So this, I think, is kind of a natural opportunity to develop fine motor skills. It's a mess of little pieces that don't really have a purpose that they can just explore and pick through, versus a more contrived opportunity for fine motor skills would be this itty bitty little paint palette and a little paintbrush, and you hand it to them and they have to aim for the paint and make little movements. So that's not as natural. Stuff apart for a young toddler, very natural. All right, what's next? Model and demonstrate how to use materials correctly. So that is something as a teacher, as a parent, that you're going to be doing all the time. We don't want children to kill the materials because we only have limited resources in our classroom. So if you're handing out drums, you need to share with the children how to hit the drum with their open hand, right? You don't want them to run and find an object and start going like this because it's going to kill the material. So you're going to model for them. You hit it with your whole hand and you're going to keep revisiting it. Like we talked about the classroom rules, you just don't share them once. Every time you see the kids with the drum, you proactively let them know, remember, we hit the drum with our whole hand. And if you see them go to grab something else to hit the drum, you can say, oh, I see you're using something that's not your hand, put that down. We hit the drum with our whole hand. And then offer activities that give children opportunities to practice their fine motor skills over and over. Where would you find, don't need that. Where would you find fine motor activities randomly? Just anybody. Where do you think you could find some fine motor activities? Library? Okay, sure. Some schools have a resource, a bookshelf of resources and lessons. And if your school has that, if your daycare, if your learning center has that, visit it. I'm sure they have infant and toddler resource books too. And if they don't, say, oh, I noticed you don't have any resource books for my classroom. Could we get some? And you can do some looking on Amazon maybe and help them choose some that would be helpful for your classroom. One place I really enjoy going to look for fine motor activities is YouTube. I'm a YouTube person. So I'm going to show you real quick, just randomly one short video I found that I liked most of the ideas they had for fine motor. Let me share that. Now I cannot see your faces again. So can somebody call out to me if you see the screen that says 10 simple sensory activities?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to start playing it and then I'm going to stop after a few seconds and you tell me if you can hear it, okay?
Hello and welcome to my channel. This week I thought I'd make...
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear it.
Great. All right, so I'm going to start at number 1 here.
So first up is no mess painting. This one is great for tummy time and it also supports fine motor skills as your baby will be using their hands and fingers to move the paint around. So you just need a piece of paper, cut it to size to fit your Ziploc bag, and then write your child's name on it and their age if you want to keep it. And then all you need to do is pop the paper in the bag and get some paints and either squeeze them in if they're squeezy paints, or like I'm doing here, use a spoon or paintbrush to just put blobs of paint into your Ziploc bag. Any colours will do, and then pop it on the floor with your baby and they can squish with their hands or feet. So next up is a metallic sheet, and Oscar's favourite. I got mine from Daiso, but you can also get foil blankets off Amazon really cheap. You just need a metallic fabric or sheet that doesn't rip or tear and isn't sharp in any way. And this really supports their auditory learning and their understanding of cause and effect as they hear noise and see where it comes from. And Oscar absolutely loves it.
This is actually a sensory activity.
This next one is great for supporting problem-solving skills. Basically, your child will have 2 things in their hands and you're going to offer them a 3rd thing. It doesn't have to be a toy, it can be anything. And it's great to see their brains working as to whether they're going to take what you offer them and which hand to let go of. And it's really fun and interesting as a mum to watch this one. Pulling pipe cleaners is a really great activity for developing your...
Okay, so this pulling pipe cleaners, I wouldn't do that with a baby. I would do that with a toddler.
Child's pincer grip. So you just add some pipe cleaners to a basket or a colander and then allow them to use their hands to pull them out. Water play is a great one for developing a whole range of sensory skills. You could do it in the bath or in a bucket outside, and depending on what you put in, and bubbles, let your baby investigate the objects and splash around and generally have a great time. DIY drums is a great one for supporting auditory learning and can be made with anything from around the house. I've used an old formula tin and containers with pasta in, but you can use pots and pans and spoons and whatever you really like. Sensory bags are so much fun and only require a little bit of effort. You just need a Ziploc bag, definitely reinforce the edges with some tape just to be safe, and then add in sequins and glitter and anything that you like, just nothing too sharp that's going to pierce the plastic. Once you've added in all your bits and pieces that you want that are going to make it interesting for your baby to watch, then just add in some coloured water, just colour it with food dye, and then make sure that you seal it really well, getting out all the air that you can, and again reinforce the seal with more tape. When you're finished with that, pop it on the floor for your baby. You can always tape it to the floor as well so it doesn't move. And then this really supports their visual tracking and actually improves their attention span. Number 8 is the ribbon basket, and this is another one that's great for fine motor skills and developing the pincer grip. You just need a load of ribbons through a basket and allow your child to pull them out. And it's really fun to see them understanding if they pull, that they eventually can pull one out completely. Peekaboo is a classic and can be done anywhere around the house or when you're out and about. It is great for developing object permanence, which is your child understanding that although an object can't be seen, that it can still exist. So you can do this with hiding toys as well as hiding yourself or your baby. And finally, number 10 is sensory bottles. This is a lovely activity for developing your baby's visual tracking and also getting that awe and wonder reaction from them. There's lots of fancy ways to make these online, but water and glitter is all you need. You can add sequins and pipe cleaners like I have and shake it about, and your baby will be absolutely enthralled. Thank you for watching this week's video.
Okay. So you may have noticed on that there were some fine motor and there was some sensory and there was some gross motor. A lot of your activities are going to actually be physical and something else because infants and toddlers, they're all learning how to use their bodies, and it'd be hard to find an activity that doesn't have an element of either fine or gross motor to it. Like I said, some of those are really interesting activities you could try, and just to give you some ideas going forward, because I know we are going to be creating those activities together. All right, so that's what I have for fine motor. We're now going to get into cognitive. All right, and I cannot see your thumbnail pictures at the moment. So we're going to have some questions, and you can put in the chat the answer to the question. 1 minute, let's see if I can turn it. All right, so this is an A, B, C, or D. Which of the following materials will be the most appropriate to promote fine motor skills in a science center? So remember, fine motor is working with your hands and your arms, not your whole body. Okay, I see everybody's choosing A. Well done. The large ball and the jump rope are gross motor, and the iPad is not appropriate to be using with children under 2 years old, in my humble opinion. All right, next one. And here I'll put a little question 2. All right, why are most infants able to crawl before they can pick up objects with their thumbs and their forefinger? A, things further away attract more attention than things that are close. B, they develop large muscles before they develop fine muscles. C, testing limits by crawling is more satisfying than picking up objects. Or D, crawling gives them confidence they need for picking up objects. Great. Looks like everybody chose B. And you are correct. All right, this one is a little tricky. We haven't done the cognitive chapter yet. Let's see if we can just puzzle it out. Which cognitive? So cognitive means thinking, okay? Thinking like science, math, sensory kind of stuff. Which cognitive skill is supported in the Math and Small Toys Center? Following rules, understanding picture-based reading, or matching and categorizing. And I understand if you get this one wrong, don't worry, we haven't done the chapter yet. It looks like a lot of people are choosing C, and they are correct. Well done. All right, let me put here question 3. How should you organize? This goes back to our learning center, our chapter about learning environments. How should you organize your materials? A, provide big bins, large bins of one kind of material for the children to share. B, put special toys out of reach so children have to ask for them. C, provide duplicates. Duplicate means more than one of the favorite toy. And D, only label objects that are in the writing area. All right, it looks like quite a few people have chosen C, and you are correct. Well done. I'm going to do a smaller share now so that I can see people's faces. All right, so cognitive. We're going to start off with the early childhood, some major learning theorists that are mentioned in your book. We're going to talk about learning through play and executive function. We're going to talk about incorporating cognitive learning during your day and supporting content area learning. All right, so what is cognitive development? It is the development of the brain and doing all the things that we would normally associate with science, math, problem solving, and being able to control your own behavior. All right. In order for children to learn, they need to be in a caring and supportive relationship with a adult. So they need, I would think, more than one secure attachment figures. An attachment figure, and we'll talk about this more as we continue on, but an attachment figure is somebody that supports the child, that is consistent with the child. They know how that figure is going to react when they do something. An attachment figure typically is the person raising the child, if they're kind and supportive to the child, and you, because you're with that child almost as much as the person raising that child. So the more consistent and loving you can be with that child, the better they will be able to develop cognitively. They need to know that they are safe and that somebody has their back and is watching out for them in order to take those risks. Amber, I did not take attendance yet. We can do it after this slide. Next, children, in order to expand what they know about the world, have to have as many opportunities as possible to experience it using their 5 senses. So for those of you that remember from elementary school, what are our 5 senses?
Smell, hear, sound, taste, and touch.
And seeing. Yep, you got it. They also need to have conversations with that attachment figure. A lot of what we do in this class is talk about how to speak with children, how to talk about what you're doing as you're doing it, how to warn them when you're going to be doing transitions, describing what you see them doing in the environment. The more rich language that they get that is back and forth. It's not just you talking at them all the time. It's you providing a pause. So if you all can see, Heather has a young one in her lap right now. That baby, I assume, is not having conversations with you yet, Heather, not full conversations. So if Heather's wanting to give this baby the conversation feel, she's asking the baby a question and then she stops and waits a few seconds for the baby to respond. The baby is not going to say, oh, you know, Grandma, I feel this way about it. No, but the baby will give some sign that they're participating with you. They'll make a sound, they'll move their head, they'll, you know, gurgle. And when they do that, you act as if a grown-up has responded to you and you respond back to that in some way. It's like, oh, you are excited to go on the plane. This is great. We're going to go together on the plane. Let's go on the plane. We're going to watch a movie. And that back and forth really develops their thinking and their conversation and their vocabulary. And last but not least, play. So play goes back to our second bullet point, in that they need to have experience of the world around them by touching, tasting, hearing, seeing. And that happens best when they're playing, because they're wanting to do it. It's not just you sitting them down in a high chair and saying, okay, what's on this flashcard? Okay, what's on this flashcard? That's not learning for a baby. Learning for a baby is holding up something and saying, this is the color red. Here, you want to touch it? Let's paint with it. Red. That's learning. All right. While it's important to realize that not all development takes place according to standards and milestone charts, there does come a time when we take a closer look. Do you all remember when we looked originally at the CDC developmental milestones? It had that area off to the side of if your child is not standing by this age or not talking to you or losing skills they once had, it's time for you to speak to your pediatrician. That's what this slide is talking about. So even though we know there's variation in how quickly they develop, we still need to pay attention to those red flags. All right, now we are, let's see, where's my textbook? It's on the floor. It's a good place for it. I am going to open up my book to the cognitive chapter. I am going to find where the theorists start, just so you all know what's going on here. On page 210 in the textbook. So I'm in the textbook. I'm on page 210, 210. And the first theorist, so a theorist is somebody who came up with some ideas and did some research and said, you know what, I think kids develop this way. Based on what I've seen and what I've researched, I think this is how they develop. So these are the people we're going to talk about now. The first one is Jean Piaget. He is very famous. If you decide to continue on with early childhood professional learning after this course, you are still going to be hearing about Piaget, I think, forever, because he came up with some really cool ideas that, even though they're not as precise as we thought they were, they're still really interesting and good. The next person is on page 213. So you notice Piaget got, let's see, 1, 2, like 3 pages. That's how important the people writing this book thought Piaget was. The next one is Lev Vygotsky. He's on page 213. Personally, I love Vygotsky because his work centers most around that attachment figure interaction, where children learn best by having somebody that has already been there and knows how something works and can coach them through it. So that's Vygotsky. And he only gets a page and a half. So they don't think he's as important as Piaget. I think he's as important as Piaget, personally. The next one that has a big portion of this is Maria Montessori on page 215. Maria Montessori is cool, not just because she's a female, but because we still have centers, you can drive around San Antonio and see that some centers we are a Montessori center. We use Montessori's ideas for our center. And for somebody like she was born in 1870, and for her ideas to still be around and still be considered relevant and useful for educating children, I think is pretty awesome. And then we have some other folk in here that we're not going to hit as hard. We're just going to mention them. And we're going to hit upon them because their ideas are valuable. We're going to hit upon them multiple times in small ways during this whole course. The next one on page 216 is Yuri Bronfenbrenner. Why Bronfenbrenner is important, we mentioned his ideas once in the learning environment chapter. And where we mentioned that was talking about how to incorporate children's families and their community into the classroom. So if you look at the chart on page 217, it has a bunch of circles like little matryoshka nesting dolls. So the big one, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller with the child in the center. So in your classroom, we talked about how you need to make your classroom relevant for that child, and then relevant for that child's family, and then relevant for your neighborhood that your center is in, and then relative to San Antonio. And that's pretty much as far as we get, because children are wanting to learn about things that they see every day in their environment, things they hear about every day in their environment. When they're really young, they don't really need to know about what's happening in other countries. They need to know what's happening in my community. Okay, so that's where Bronfenbrenner's ideas come into this course. The next we have is Eric Erikson on 217 and 218. We don't get a whole lot into Erikson. When you're reading this chapter, I would assume that some of this is slightly confusing. I've always found the way that they describe on 218, the 3 different stages, as somewhat confusing, but they do have it broken down by age group. And if you read the descriptions of it, it does make sense. So the description on number 1 is during children's development from birth to 18 months. This is talking about the attachment figure and consistency again. If the baby cries, will the attachment figure respond to them in a caring and loving way? Or will they ignore them and tell them to be quiet? If they respond in a caring and loving way, the child learns to trust the world. If they respond to that baby in a negative way and tell them to be quiet, hush up, stop crying, I'm not going to pay attention to you, then the baby learns not to trust the world. So that's trust versus mistrust. The next one talks about autonomy versus shame and doubt. I think that this really focuses on you doing everything for a child and supporting them to learn how to do for themselves versus them not being able to figure it out at all because they don't have support, or you just doing it for them because you don't think they can. So they either learn to build up their self-image that they can do things and are capable, or they learn that they're incapable of doing anything. And of course, we want them to feel capable. And then it goes into the third one, talking about initiative with peers, getting along with other people and learning how to participate in a community. On page 219, we have Abraham Maslow. If you remember, we had that pyramid or the triangle the first day or two of class that talked about at the bottom of the triangle, the basic needs that children have to survive. So air, food, water, sleep, shelter. And then talking about safety and security next, love and belonging. And then at the very top of the triangle, we have self-esteem and self-actualization, being able to reach your full potential. We have to support children with their basic needs, their needs of love and support before they can get up to the top. So that's just a quick overview on Maslow, like we've done. On 219, it talks about Howard Gardner. And Howard Gardner is famous for his theory of multiple intelligences, which if you are somebody that likes to do Facebook quizzes, you know, where choose your, if you choose this, this is what your star chart is. If you answer this quick quiz, this is what Harry Potter character you are. I hope everybody can remember one of those quizzes that's popped up over the last decade or so. If you take this quiz, we will tell you what your spirit animal is, type thing, right? So Howard Gardner, if you're interested in learning which learning style belongs to you, you can probably go online and find a quiz for multiple intelligences and see which one you fall into just for fun. You don't have to, but that's something that may appeal to you. Why I believe Howard Gardner is important is because he reminds us that people need multiple ways of teaching something in order to understand it well. So we talked about red. You can hold up a flashcard of the picture of this and tell the baby red. That's one way of learning it, correct? Holding up a picture and showing it to them and say red. Another way they could learn it is you hand them the bottle and say red, this is red. Another way they could learn it is you open this up, you pour it out on a tray and you let them squish their hands through it and you tell them that is red. Another way you could learn it is you turn on some music and give them red scarves and let them experience red that way. Another way they could learn it is you give them a bunch of red fruits to eat and taste, and that is red. Do you see how that might make a stronger impression on a child's mind, getting it all these different ways to understand the color red versus just the picture of red? That's what multiple intelligences really is about. Teaching it as many ways as you can so that children can develop a really good concept of what something is. For example, what's something that you might have learned recently? Oh, has anybody ever watched a cooking show on TV? All right, when you watch that cooking show, let's say you were trying to learn how to make dumplings. Any kind of dumplings, I don't care. Polish dumplings, pierogi, Japanese dumplings, empanadas, whatever, dumplings. You were trying to make dumplings. You watched it on TV and the person does it beautifully because they have a lot of practice, right? So they get that filling in there, they fold it over and they're like, crimp, 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 crimp. Look at my beautiful dumpling. That's one way of learning it. When you went to the kitchen to try making it, did it work the same way as you saw it on the screen?
No, not at all.
And there's a couple reasons for that, right, Juliet? That person on the screen probably had to do that a few times and they had, you know, they had it cut out to make it beautiful. They don't want to show you the bloopers. They want to show you the good shot, right? And this is your first time doing something. I bet you had to practice it a few times and maybe you even had to go online and watch a couple different videos of other people doing it and maybe look at some step-by-step instructions. Maybe if you were lucky, somebody in your family knew how to do it and they could go and stand next to you and show you how to do it. If you get all those different inputs, So if you get the online directions, if you get the television showing you how to do it, if you try it yourself, if you have your mother-in-law standing next to you and showing you actually this is how you do it, then you get it. Does that make sense? How having the different inputs makes a better understanding overall. That's Gardner. And then the last one that we have in here is Sarah Smolansky. And she talks about play theory and why it's important for children to play in order to learn things. Play is important because it's motivating to us. We want to play. Play is fun. So this just goes into the importance of why we need to make as much learning as possible playful and set up our environment so that it's fun and exciting, so children want to mess with these things and learn about them. Okay, so that is your like vroom, going through the learning theorist. I do have 2 videos for you. The first video is talking about Vygotsky and Piaget. The second video is talking about Maria Montessori. It is now 9:53. I don't know about y'all, but I need a bathroom break. Let's come back together at 10. And we'll watch the first video on Piaget and Vygotsky at 10. All right? See you in a little bit. For those of you, well, no, you should be able to hear me. I'm going to stop the recording or pause the recording.
Expanding to include more abstract thinking, problem solving, and hypothetical questions. Now, Piaget's 4-stage model has been criticized for oversimplifying things and for being too rigid in how it classifies certain abilities by age. Today, for example, but researchers have detected these phases at earlier ages than Piaget ever did, sometimes way earlier. Like some types of object permanence have been observed in 3-month-olds. Psychologists also see development as more of a continuous process rather than a series of stepping stones. But even Piaget understood that his stages weren't as fixed as he made them sound. And he wasn't the only guy on the block talking about development. For instance, his...
Okay, I understand that that was a lot of information. And you don't need to know all of it. I just thought it was really interesting for you to see all that stuff he was talking about, all the different things, all went for Piaget. And if we look at the textbook, again, Piaget is on page 110, or 210, 211, and 212. The things your book focuses on for Piaget are schemas, which he did mention, and schemas are, if you think about it, I have an example for you. So once when I was in Michigan, we had a visitor, professor come to visit from a big city, okay? The professor from the big city was met at the airport and somebody drove her to where we are. And we were driving through farm country, okay? And farm country in Michigan included cows. And the professor from the big city looked out the window and saw this large animal with 4 legs that was brown. And the professor said, "What is that?" And everybody looked at her, I'm sure, like she was crazy, and said, "That's a cow." And she said, "No, cows are black and white." Why do you think somebody that hasn't left the city before would think that a cow is black and white? Where would they get that idea, do you think?
Images that they've seen growing up.
So most of our picture books that we have in our classroom show a black and white cow, right? That's like the generic cow picture. That's what she was drawing on. That was her, according to Piaget, that was her schema for cow. That's all she knew about cow. She knew the cow was black and white. It had 4 legs. It was a big animal and it made milk and probably steak. That was probably all she knew about cow. All right. When she saw the brown animal, she couldn't link it up. It didn't make sense to her. So it didn't assimilate. According to Piaget, if she looked at it and it made sense to her as cow, that would have been assimilation. She would have been like, oh yeah, there's something that falls into my schema of cow. That's a cow too. Even if she saw a rainbow one, okay, that's a cow too. Maybe if she kept driving, she may have seen a rhinoceros. And she might have said, wow, that has 4 legs, it's big, it must be a cow too. That's all assimilation, right? Whenever you see something new that doesn't fit what you already know, you have the choice to either say nope or yep, come on in, you can be a cow too. Piaget said, when you just bring it in and allow it to be part of it, that's assimilation. When somebody sitting next to you says, honey, that's a rhino, that's not a cow, then she has to start a new schema for rhino. And in order to start a new schema, you need to notice what's different about it. So you'd say, okay, so it has 4 legs, it's big for cow, it's big for rhino. What makes them different? Okay, the rhino's gray. I know cows are black and white and brown now. So those things are different. What else do you notice that's different? Oh, this has a horn in the center of its head. Okay, great. Horn. And then she keeps driving and then she sees a large animal, 4 legs with horns. What is she going to put it in, cow or rhino? Could go either way, right? I'd probably put it in rhino because I just learned that rhinos have horns. This is why we need to expose children to a bunch of stuff. And it needs to be stuff they see in person because they can make those descriptions in their mind better. So most children have either a dog or a cat at home, correct? If you have a cat at home, the first time you see a dog as a baby, you're going to say, that's a cat. So you need to expose children to this. You could, a child comes and says, that's a cat. Oh, you think this is a cat? I can see a cat has 4 legs and this has 4 legs, but this is a doggy. This, let's come over and look at the doggy and explore it and see how it's different than a cat. Through exposure of actually seeing and interacting with things, we learn more about them and our vocabulary and our understanding expands. So that's the part about schemas, assimilation, and accommodation. If you look on page 211, it talks about how children's minds develop. The youngest category is sensory motor, where everything is about using your 5 senses to explore and seeing what your body can do. The next category they have is pre-operational. And that is once you've learned what a cat is by handling the cat and petting the cat, then pre-operational, when somebody says cat, you understand what they're talking about. So you have to experience it in the sensory motor phase. And then later on, when somebody mentions the word cat, it immediately comes to mind what it is. So being able to understand just by language is the next stage. And then as you get older and older, you're able to reason more and more without having to put your hands on something to understand it. But the most important part for us in our classrooms is being able to get children in there and experiencing as much as possible so that later on they have all these really good hands-on experiences that they can use to make their understanding work. All right, so that is Piaget. I understand it's a lot. But it's really interesting, at least, right? And you can read through it. I can put the link for that. I didn't record all of that fellow's spiel, but I can send you the link to it if it's something that interests you. And actually, I believe the link is in the PowerPoint as well when I bring it up. So you'll be able to see that in the YouTube video of it. Now he only has like a minute on Vygotsky, but I think we should take a look at it. So I'm going to go back to the video we were at. And he has about a minute about Vygotsky. Can you all see and hear?
His contemporary Belarusian psychologist
Can you see and hear?
Yes.
Great.
Lev Vygotsky
Let me see if I can get this stuff out of the screen.
had some ideas of his own. While Piaget focused on how a kid's mind grows by interacting with the physical environment, Vygotsky emphasized how early development occurs through parental instruction and interaction with social environments. He believed less in set stages and more in the idea that caregiver adults provide a sort of scaffolding that helps children climb to higher levels of thinking and learning. Vygotsky put a lot of emphasis on language as a way of assigning meaning to things, and he also suggested that the ways kids develop might actually vary across cultures. In the end, there's room for lots of different theories here, but perhaps Piaget's greatest achievement was developing theoretical depth in the concept that kids actually think very differently than adults. This fact has helped a lot of parents and teachers, and his work spurred a new era of research in the field.
Okay. So he does Vygotsky for like half a minute and then goes back to Piaget. Let me stop the share real quick. Vygotsky is all about you as a competent adult interacting, speaking, engaging with that child, doing the contingent responses. So based on you ask the child a question, they respond, and then your next question or the next thing you say depended on how they responded. That's contingent responding. So as back and forth exchanges, really important with Vygotsky. And he used the term scaffolding. Let's see, do we have scaffolding mentioned in our book? We do. So since it's in our book on page 214, I am going to mention it. Children, let's see if there's a way I can say this. Children have different levels of competency. So let's say, let's think even about ourselves, all right? Let's say that we are going to class, all right? We have a level of comfort and competence that we can already do our first day of the yoga class. So maybe our comfort level is that we know we can do pushing up, we can do a plank, we can stick our butt in the air and do a downward dog. Maybe we know that we can touch our toes, and that's our comfort level. That's what we can already do. Now, the next thing, so here's what we can already do. The next layer out is what we can do if the instructor helps us, scaffolds us. So this is the scaffolding part. This next layer is what we can do if somebody's talking us through it and showing us how to do it. So maybe you're listening to the instructor and the instructor says, you need to relax your back muscles. You need to take a breath in and gently let it out and relax. And you can get into another position with help. That's scaffolding. Does that make sense? There's what you can do by yourself easily. And then the next level out is what you can do when somebody models and tells you and helps you. Does that make sense, y'all? Crickets in the background. Is anybody still on here with me? Okay, thank you, Myra. Thank you, Heather.
Yes.
I was scared for a minute. I was like, everybody hung up. They've gone to have lunch. It's kind of early for that. So thinking Vygotsky, this is what we can do by ourselves. This next level out is what we can do with support. You are the scaffolding support in the classroom, okay? So think about your babies. What can they do by themselves that they don't need help with? Or your toddlers. What can they do by themselves that they don't need you to help them at all? Put it in the chat or shout it out. What can they do by themselves without support? Children in your class, what can they do without support? Without any help from you?
In my toddler class, they can eat on their own. They don't need me to spoon feed them.
Okay. Thank you, Lydia. They can eat by themselves in her class. Delexis says they can grab objects by themselves. They don't need her help.
The babies in my class, some of the younger ones are actually starting to sit up on their own.
How exciting. So sitting up by yourself. Juliet said roll over by themselves. Monica said walk by themselves. Myra said some push themselves up. Wonderful. Thank you for participating. Angelica, toddlers can tuck in the chairs by themselves. Great. It's a good life skill. Now, I want you to think about the next level. The scaffolded. What do they need your assistance in order to do? And with your assistance, they can do it. It's not you doing it for them. It's you talking them through it and showing them how to do it. What can they do with your scaffolded support? The next level out.
One of my kids needs my help walking.
Okay. So do you like hold your fingers?
Yeah, we hold her hands, and sometimes we'll push her against the wall and have her take at least 1 or 2 steps towards us.
So you'll balance. Since this is being recorded, let's make sure that we're just like balancing her against the wall. Yes.
Yes.
Alejandra said washing hands with support. Great. Juliet said hold their own bottles with support. Okay. Anybody else? What can your kids do with support? Let's get one more person. Thank you, Myra. Hold them at first so that they can learn to stand up. And Heather said pull up. Okay, great. That's what they can do with support. Now, the next level out, so we're thinking like a circle. This is what they can do. This is what they can do with support. This next level out is frustration. Frustration. When you are frustrated, do you still want to work at something? Frustrated, I'm leaving, going home. Do we want children to try to operate out here at frustration level? No. So Vygotsky said, this level right here for scaffolding, this is the sweet spot. We want them to stay in this level where they can do more than what they're currently comfortable with, but they're not frustrated. That's scaffolding, okay? That's the sweet spot we want to live in our classroom. Does anybody need me to go over that again or try to teach it a different way? Or did that make sense? Okay, thank you, Juliet. If anybody needs me to go over it again in a different way, I will try to make charts and we will get this done. On page 214, it gives you a term in a green box. The term that it gives you in that green box is the zone of proximal development. I don't believe you need to know that term, but just so you know why it's in that green box, the zone of proximal development is the space between what they can currently do and what they can do while scaffolded. So this white space right here is their zone of proximal development. That's the sweet spot that we were talking about. Anything outside of that is frustration level and is no man's land. All right. All right. Let's talk about Montessori now. So I'm going to pull up a Montessori video. It's less technical than the first one we watched, so stick with me. I think it's a good video. Make it full screen for you. I'm going to play a second or two and then check and see that you all can see and hear it.
Montessori education is based on the...
Are we seeing and hearing?
Yes.
Great.
Yes,
All right, here it goes.
principles developed by Maria Montessori, who opened her first school for children of low-income workers in an apartment building in Rome in 1907. The school was called Casa dei Bambini, Home for Children. This first casa was furnished with a teacher's table, a stove, a blackboard, some chairs, group tables for the children, and a cabinet filled with materials that Montessori developed in her earlier career when she researched how to teach kids who experience some form of mental disability. Maria Montessori created the materials after she realized that students seemed to understand complex concepts better when they engaged all their senses. Activities at this first school included personal care, such as dressing and undressing, care of the environment, like sweeping, dusting, and gardening. Otherwise, they were free to move around and play with the materials. Montessori did not teach herself, but instead oversaw the classroom work of her teachers. Montessori observed that children showed episodes of deep concentration and multiple repetitions of the same activity. Given free choice, kids showed more interest in practical activities and the materials than normal toys, sweets, or other rewards. Over time, spontaneous self-discipline emerged. Montessori concluded that working independently, children seemed to reach new levels of autonomy and became self-motivated learners. She began to see the role of the teacher as a facilitator of young human beings who are free to move and act within the limits of a prepared environment. The goal? To grow children to become independent and responsible adults who share a love for learning. Soon after, Montessori herself and her ideas started traveling the world to inspire progressive thinkers and educators from all over. The inventors, Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison, became early advocates. Later alumni include Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia, author Gabriel Garcia Marquez, as well as the two Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Today, the term Montessori stands more for a method than a school itself. The fact that it can be used freely by anyone led to a great variation of schools. Educators all over the world borrow Montessori's name, insights, and materials to organize kindergartens, elementary schools, special needs programs, or even full 12-year curriculums. Some parents use it for homeschooling. The following characteristics are shared among most programs. Students are free to choose what to learn. Open classrooms that allow free movement. Use of specialized Montessori materials. Mixed age classes from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, or 6 to 12, so children can learn from each other. Uninterrupted blocks of study time, usually 3 hours. No grading or homework, and a trained teacher. Maria Montessori once famously said, "Never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed." What are your thoughts on Montessori? Please share your opinions in the comments.
Okay. All right, so Montessori. If you went to a Montessori toddler class, more than likely you would see the classroom set up with, usually you would see the classroom set up with very low shelves for the children to be able to access everything. Some of the activities would be on a tray, which would have, okay, so maybe this is the painting tray, and one child would go and grab the tray, take it to where they wanted to work, do the activity. When they're done, they put the tray back. Montessori focuses fairly heavily on the child working solo, on the materials and experiencing the things as they feel the need. They focus on also caring for the environment in the classroom. So they'll have like a house area with smaller brooms and mops for the children to clean the classroom or play clean the classroom. They will have like a dishwash sink for them to wash things. They'll have maybe some rags and spray for them to wipe down the leaves of the plants to get the dust off them. I have seen in a 2-year-old Montessori classroom that they've had large sewing needles and yarn for them to use that as well. So Montessori. Okay, let's get back into our PowerPoint. Brilliant. So like I said, this screen shows you the YouTube link. So if that's something you want to watch again later, feel free. I have the one for the Piaget and Vygotsky, and again, the one for Montessori. All right. The link between play and academic success has been firmly established. Play is children's entry to the physical, social, and affective worlds, meaning emotional. Play builds the cognitive skills we are learning about. Let me get where I can see the video panel because it keeps disappearing. Great. All right. So in your textbook, you don't need to look at it right now. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think it's 227. Yep. So in your book, there is this chart on page 227 and 228 talking about how your different parts of your classroom. So it talks about block area, math and manipulatives area or small toys, science area, dramatic play or home area, music and movement, cooking, again, home area, and outdoor areas. It talks about how the child might play in those areas, how you as a teacher can support that play. And then in the last column, it talks about the cognitive skills children learn while in those areas. So this chart might give you some ideas for your activities this week that you're doing. So just keep in mind the chart on page 227 and 228 can be useful for designing your activities this week. And you are doing 2 activities again for this chapter. All right. Now, if we were meeting in person, this would be the time that I would hand each of you this bubble wand, and you'd go outside and you would take turns pretending to be the teacher while the other people in your group would, and that of course worked anticlimactically. Let me see if I can get some bubble stuff on here. While people in your group would blow bubbles and you would support them like you would in the classroom with toddlers. However, I cannot reach through the screen and hand you this, so we're going to have to take some cognitive leaps here. And in order to do that, I do have a video for you. This video I'm going to show you, I am not going to record because it is a video of an actual teacher and actual students at Pre-K for SA. So I'm going to stop the screen, the recording, and then we'll look at it. So let me pause the recording first. What are some of your initial thoughts on how she's supporting learning during this lesson? What did she do?
She is doing the activity with them.
She did it with them. The teacher participated. Amy says she made a point to acknowledge each student. Thank you, Amy.
She kept asking why or how do you think that is happening? I like that.
And when she asks that, she's doing what she can to pull language out of the children.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just asking them a one word, question like, how do you feel? Fine. It's like, how did you make that happen? Because it requires more of an explanation. Heather said, I love how she explains everything. So she was describing what she was seeing, correct? So remember that one child that was going like this? And she asked them first, what are you doing? The child didn't respond. And she said, I see that you are moving your finger in a circular motion. So she was giving them some vocabulary and still kind of engaging them, even though they didn't really want to talk to her right there. Myra said she was 100% engaged with them verbally by showing them and asking them questions. What did she do at the beginning before she handed out the materials? Did anybody notice?
She kind of explained the activity.
Showed how to use it safely. Did you notice that she had them practice blowing before she gave them the bubble solution to blow into? Because that's not something that your kids automatically know how to do, right? You give them a straw, what's the first thing they're going to do? So yeah, she had them practice the blowing first. Thank you, Gloria. She demonstrated the blowing. Delexis, she's asking many open-ended questions. Good keyword there, Delexis, while acknowledging each child through the process. Was she using really simple language with the children, or was she using higher level language with them? Was she dumbing it down for them?
No, she wasn't.
She wasn't. She used what? Solution, formation. What else?
She said someone predicted.
Predictions. Those are not words that kids that age usually hear. And she could have not used those words. She could have said, so does anybody have a guess of what's going to happen next? But instead she used the word prediction. You can do it both ways. And it's lovely if, like, she used the word prediction, if she then gave an explanation of what prediction was. So she could have said, so do you have a prediction of what's going to happen next? Prediction means a really good guess type thing. So you can use those big words with them, but it's lovely if you give them an explanation too of what the big word is, because you don't want them to feel frustrated that they don't understand. Myra said very kind and simple ways to help them understand and engage. Question, did anybody notice? So there was one little girl that was sitting on the right side of the screen that wasn't talking to her, but she was showing her that she had the bubbles on her hand. Did you all notice what the teacher did in order to engage that child?
She did what she did.
She copied what the child did, right? She went and she blew real quick and got some bubbles and put them on her own hand, and then asked the child, oh, how does that feel on your hand? And she got like 3 words out of the child, more than she had before. Alicia pointed out that this activity used all 5 senses. Those kids were smelling, hearing, probably a few of them probably sucked in at one point or another and tasted that bubble solution. They were one little boy that chose to shake up his jar instead of doing it the way that everybody else was doing it. How did she react to that? Because he went off script. Do you all remember that? He was sitting on the left side of the screen.
I think she just described what he was doing, like, oh, I see you were shaking it, I think.
And I'm going to tell you, because I was the one recording it, I'm going to tell you by the end of it, his pants were all wet. So he got one of those, what are they called, a natural consequence of trying it out. He got a cause and effect, right? You spill water on yourself, you get wet. They did offer him a change of clothes, but just being able to experience a cause and effect is really powerful. Instead of the teacher saying, no, don't do that, you're going to get wet. right? So that's important too. Does anybody else have anything else to add about this video before we move on to something else? Okay, great. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So there are a number of ways you can incorporate cognitive learning throughout your day. I need to get back up the video panel here. Thank you. In the chat. Thinking about your day, a regular day, is there a time when you try to be intentional and teach the children something rather than just, you know, responding to what's going on in the environment throughout the day? Is there a time? So there's an example here, the picture of the child in the sandbox. How could you interact with children in the sandbox in order to teach them something? I hope most of you at least have a sandbox at your center. You might not. Has anybody played in the sand as a child? Do you know how sand reacts? Okay, so you can, they have those specific buckets there for making castles. So definitely, maybe there's 2 buckets. Maybe you get a bucket and show them how to do it, and you help them pack down their bucket. I see Juliet's talking about how to draw in the sand and make different shapes. You can discuss adding water to sand and how it changes the consistency and how it sticks together differently when it has water. Yeah, so there's different ways that you can integrate it. I have a short video example of some toddlers outside with a teacher and how she supports them with their learning just on a normal interaction. So an interaction that you'd see happen almost any day you went outside. All right, are we seeing, and
you want to touch it, Ellen?
Can we see and hear the video?
Yes.
Great, so I'm gonna play it for you. Listen to how she's supporting them.
You want to touch it, Ellen? See how the dirt is? Look at this side. Like would you like some more, Ellen? I like it too. Look at this side. It's grass.
Can we make
You want to do what? Is that so silly? What do you think we should do with it?
It's grass.
Yeah, it is grass. How does it feel? Kind of pokey. It's long. Whoa, look how long it is. You see how long it is, Elliot? What do you think about that? Tell me what you think about that grass coming out.
I see let's make a plant.
You want to go make something? You want to go make a plant? Okay, where should we put it? Do you want to walk around and find a spot to put it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ellis is going to hold it. And then I guess me and Elliot, we can walk around and you can too to find a place to plant it. What about right here? Yeah, you want to put it right here? Okay. Do you want to help me cover that with some mud? Yeah. Do you want to help Elliot put some mud around it so we can plant it? You come on this side. You want to get down and help me put some mud on it? See, we can take our fingers and just...
Look, my leg,
Did your leg get all dirty? It's okay. See, look at my hand. It got all dirty. It's okay. Oh, thank you. See, we'll put some mud around it and plant it. Do you think it will grow more? Yeah, it will grow more.
My hand is all dirty.
Yeah, my hand got all dirty too.
My hand's all dirty.
My hand's all dirty too. That's so funny.
My hand is all dirty.
Your hands are all dirty just like mine and just like Ellis's. Our hands get dirty when we play in the mud because it's all wet. We have to come back and check on it, okay? And make sure it's growing.
My daddy made a plant and it going down, boom, boom, boom.
Your daddy made a plant? Yeah.
Yeah.
We made a plant too. We'll have to come back and check on it.
A big one, make a big one.
It will make a big plant. You think it's okay right there? Is that a good spot for it?
Yeah.
All right, any thoughts on how that teacher was supporting science and sensory, her cognitive skills on the playground?
She was engaging the children, not just one or the other, but keeping them both engaged at the same time and trying to have them interact together rather than individually.
Yeah, so she was trying to form those connections between them and her. She could, so I may be wrong, but it looked like the little girl was younger. I don't know if she was or not. It could just be, a developmental height thing. But it seemed like she was a little younger than the little boy, but she was still engaging with both of them, asking questions. Anything else you've noticed about it? She was reassuring them that it was okay to get dirty. Has anybody ever noticed that 2-year-olds in particular are completely fine with getting dirty right up until they notice they're dirty? And then it's just like, psh, can't happen. Or has it just been the kids I've been around? Delexis pointed out that she got down on their eye level and she held that plant for them at their eye level. They could all interact with it. Much better than her standing up and just holding it out for them. Anything else we noticed about it? I'm gonna have an uncomfortable silence here and see if anybody else says anything. Asking them how it feels. Thank you, Gloria. She interacted with it too, so she's like, she modeled, we can feel it this way. Look, we can explore how long it is. And she was pulling up gently and showing them how to do that. When it was time to plant it, she let the little girl carry it for a bit. That was pretty cool. Did you notice that the conversation took turns? And it had that contingent responding, right? She even asked the little one that really wasn't talking a lot yet, how does it feel? And, oh, you think it feels silly or you think it feels funny? And, allowing her the space to respond to that. Same thing. Ooh, I warmed up all of a sudden. Okay, moving the blanket. Sorry, hot flash, y'all. It happens. The serve and return, she asked the little boy a question. He had an answer for her, right? She couldn't understand all of it, but she did her best to rephrase it and kind of ask him, so you mean that your daddy planted a big plant? And he thought about it for a minute and he's like, yeah, that's a good enough translation. I will go with that. So not just dismissing when a child sounds like they're babbling, but doing your best to understand what they mean and asking them, do you mean this? And allowing them to respond is lovely. All right, thank you. Whew. Okay, turning this off altogether now. All right. Now, let's chat for a few minutes about concrete versus abstract. Let me pull up the chat. All right. So concrete versus abstract. If we go with our example of that professor from the big city, She had a very abstract understanding of what a cow was, because the only time she had seen a cow was in a picture book. Okay, that's abstract. That's all she understood is from the picture book. Concrete was when she was driving through that field of cattle and saw the cow. That's concrete. It would have been even more concrete if she had gotten out, walked over and touched the cow and looked it over and smelled cow. Okay. What is something in your classroom that children can experience and get a concrete understanding of? Think about your classroom. What's something they can get a concrete understanding of? By being able to touch it and smell it and maybe lick it. Blocks, thank you.
Shakers, like maracas.
Sure, shakers. I feel like I have a shaker here I could have played with for that, but I don't see it. Shakers, maracas, books, a concrete understanding of what a book is. Toys to chew on, dolls.
The utensils in the kitchen.
The utensils in the kitchen. I'm also seeing that somebody said play food. I'm going to challenge the play food one. So they're getting an understanding of what a piece of plastic food is, but are they getting an understanding of what that actual food is? So it's still abstract because it's not the actual piece of food, right? So they're getting a concrete understanding of, oh, this is a piece of plastic. Okay, great. And they'll understand how heavy that piece of plastic is, what it tastes like when you wash it, you know, and sanitize it the next day, how water dribbles out of it. But they're not really getting the concept of what that plastic orange, they're not getting the concept of orange from your plastic orange.
I don't know if this counts, but at our daycare, we have a half wall, so you can see the next class. So we have mobile infants on one side and like, I guess, younger babies, so even smaller. So I feel like seeing them could probably be part of it, because some kids don't have younger siblings. They don't get to experience it.
And so they don't remember when they were a baby, right?
Exactly.
So they're getting a concrete idea of what baby is. To make it even more concrete would be if they could touch and handle the babies, which I could see why that wouldn't be a good idea, but that would make it more concrete. But they're hearing the babies cry, the babies babble, they're seeing them move around. They're probably smelling baby every once in a while. So they're getting that. Here we have a chart or a scale showing you the most concrete to the most abstract. And we have an orange as an example. In your classroom, what is the most concrete experience they get with an orange? Do they ever get to hold an orange, a real orange in your classroom?
We have peeled, like already peeled oranges that we offer as a snack occasionally. Okay. So they get to actually feel it, hold it. They feed themselves. Well, in the
most part,
the mobile infant side can do that. Not my
side. So that's the most concrete experience they're getting with an orange, when they get to eat it, see it, smell it, taste it. Okay. The most abstract idea of orange in your classroom maybe is you have a book about counting fruit. Okay. And it has a picture of an orange and maybe the number 1 next to it. That's the most abstract in your classroom of orange. The most concrete is when they get to eat it for snack. The most abstract is the picture in the book or the plastic orange in the home area. All right, so I'm going to give you an example now of how difficult it is for a child to understand something that's abstract when they don't have the hands-on experience. So without using your computer or your smartphone, don't cheat. What is Hyloceras undatus? Without cheating, and I think Lydia knows this. Don't you cheat either, Lydia. Can anybody tell me without looking this up online in any way what that is? Any ideas? I'm going to tell you, I've taken a lot of years of science and I wouldn't have been able to come up with very much of anything.
Exercise? I don't know.
Exercise. Thank you for the guess. I appreciate that. All right. That is the most abstract. You're not really understanding anything about it from the most abstract. Maybe if you were a Latin student, you'd probably get the parts of it because it's coming from Latin. All right. Now I'm going to give you, we're moving on the scale from the most abstract to the next level up. We're not all the way to concrete yet. We're just moving a little bit. And this, because of your concrete experiences, some of you will know what it is now. So does anybody know what this is? Has anybody experienced this concretely? Okay, it's a fruit, yes. Has anybody ever tasted one before?
Yes.
Yes.
HEB's selling them now even, right? But pretend for a minute that it's 1990 and you're living in San Antonio. This was not a thing in 1990 in San Antonio, really. So you wouldn't have had it, you would have known, hey, it's a fruit and that's it. So now we're gonna move again. So we started most abstract, then we were here with the words dragon fruit. Now we're here with a black and white drawing of it. Okay. This tells you a little bit more information, kind of what the shape is, but it still doesn't really help you understand it. And so we'll go one more over. The colored picture of it instead of a drawing is more concrete. And if you were in my face-to-face class right now, I would now pull out a real dragon fruit. We would cut it up together and we'd all sample it because that's the most concrete way to understand dragon fruit. If you have a garden at your daycare, it's also great to have a vegetable garden or to have fruit trees for the kids to go experience, because when you go to HEB, are you really understanding what banana is just by getting the banana and smelling banana and seeing it? What other things could we learn about banana if we had a garden?
Timeline of how long it takes for them to grow.
How long it takes to grow, the different stages of development, what a banana plant looks like, what it feels like, what it needs to live and grow, how the freezes can kill it off in South Texas. All that stuff is really good information for you to be able to understand something better. Juliet, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just gonna say the different colors. That it changes throughout the season.
Too, right? There's not just one kind of banana. You've got options out there in the banana growing world. I know I'm not going to say which one of my relatives, a young teenager, we will say, out to a farm when we were in Michigan. And I said, let's go pick some cherries. And I said, do you know what kind of plant a cherry grows on? And she said, is it a vine? And this is a teenager, okay? So because the only experience she had with cherries was just getting the bag of cherries in the grocery store and eating them, she understood what a cherry tasted like, what it looked like, but she had never seen where it came from and experienced picking a cherry and how that works. So the more concrete, the more hands-on, the more different kinds of ways you can experience something, the better your foundational knowledge is. Can anybody give me an example of something that maybe you've grown in a garden or something you've raised up? Oh, here we go. Some of you have children. You experienced baby from all stages of baby, right? From start to, some of you from start to moving out of the house as a grown-up. You've gotten that experience of the full range of development. Is there anything like a fruit or vegetable, perhaps, that you've gotten to see that full range of development for it?
When I was younger, my parents had a vegetable garden, and I helped go in and weed. They let me help plant, and then I would hide in there and sit and eat the vegetables after they grew, and I'd get in trouble for it. But
oh no,
it was fun watching all the stages.
Did that help you in any way to understand anything else as an adult, as you were learning in school?
Yeah, it gave me a better understanding of like when we learned about farmers and why it's important that they do what they do and we have them. And I was like, well, yeah, we planted our own food. We ate it. We shared it with family, friends, neighbors when we had overgrowth. And so it did give me a better understanding as I was going through life of other things people were trying to teach me.
Yep, thank you. So that's kind of what I'm going at. I see Juliet said she's had experience with a peach tree, a Chinese plum tree. Gloria said an avocado tree, peach tree, fig tree. I am intrigued by the avocado tree. I love avocados. But for the two of you that have seen these trees growing as a child and helped harvest and seen the bugs that get into them, you know, so you get to learn about the other things that want to share that fruit with you as it's growing, and how actions that the farmer takes to try to preserve the harvest as much as possible. Those are all good things to know going forward as an adult. I have a quick share here that I'd like to show you. So you can do gardening. Okay, are you all able to see the Growing Minds Farm to School?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So if you look online, you can see different examples of gardening with infants and toddlers. And this starts out talking about sensory gardening. And at the program I was at in Michigan, we did have a sensory garden built just for the infant classroom. Some of the things we kept in it were rosemary. What else was in there? Basil, rosemary. I think we might have had some cilantro or parsley, things that when the children touch it and they pull their hand back, they can smell, or it releases smell into the environment. So things that have different textures, and also things that if they pluck it off and accidentally eat it, that it's not toxic. That's a big thing. But here it talks about doing a sensory garden, and it gives you ideas for how to do that. The one we did in Michigan was built up about 18 inches, and it was really sturdy. It was a family member of a child in the baby room built it. It was a rectangular box, really sturdy, and the babies could come up to it and pull themselves up to standing and pat inside it and touch the different plants. You can also have, like Heather mentioned, a garden that has paths through it for the babies to be able to crawl through or be able to go under things and be inside it. Sandboxes and dirt digging spots also kind of count towards a sensory garden. At Pre-K for SA, some of our, well, I think even all of our playgrounds now have herbs planted and flowers, non-toxic flowers and herbs and some vegetables planted all through the whole playground so that children have an opportunity to just stop and experience those things without having to go specifically to the garden area. If you're wondering about non-toxic plants, it's a pretty easy lookup. Texas A&M has a list of non-toxic plants online for children gardens. It talks about the different senses, right? So they have for the sight sense, things you can add, including mobiles and bird feeders, sound, how you can put wind chimes or make wind chimes with the children, how you can plant bird baths where the children can see the birds splashing in the water. We talked about the touch, the textures of the plants and the smell, and then the taste. Especially if you have toddlers, taste is a big thing. We had, for one of our young toddler classes, we had tomatoes growing on the side of their playground. And one little boy elected himself the guardian of the tomatoes. And he would go over there and he'd crouch down and he'd just watch the tomatoes for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just gaze at the tomatoes. And if any other child came over and wanted to pluck a green one, he'd be like, no, you can't touch the tomatoes. And we had a chart next to the tomato plant that showed the different colors of tomatoes and when we could pick it, the color it needed to be. And so they could compare, is it ready for picking yet? No. So it's really cool for them to see. And then after it's been picked, it can come inside, the caregiver washes it up, cuts it really small and lets everybody sample it. And it really gets them invested in trying out new things, especially if they grew it. Great. All right, measurement is another thing that children learn and that you can teach in a classroom. Ways you can teach it are just talking about, is something bigger or smaller? So for example, which one is bigger? This one's bigger, this one's smaller. You can talk about taller. So this blue one is taller than the pink one. You can talk about heavier. Which one weighs more? Which one's heavier? You can talk about volume. Which one holds more bubble liquid? And you can try it out. For time, you can talk about, like we were talking about the tomatoes growing, having that chart for them to see how long it takes for it to come from a green tomato to a red tomato. You don't have to use a ruler with children. You can, especially in a toddler class. I do have a child-friendly ruler. Let me grab it so you can see what it looks like. So this is a child-friendly measuring tape I had purchased, I don't know, online. Does it say learning resources? So that is the tape measure that I had gotten when I was working in a 2-year-old classroom. So the kids didn't really understand the numbers on it yet, but they were really fascinated with the idea of how big something is. You can also measure with your feet. So you can have the children, you know, let's take 5 big steps and see if it's 5 big steps. And you can take them together, or you can count how many steps is it? How long is it? How many steps long is it? Or you could use your arm to measure something. How long is it? So just talking about comparisons of objects in your classroom. How much do they weigh? How long are they? How big are they? How heavy are they? Are all important to understand mathematics. Other things you can understand about mathematics and placement are location words, spatial reasoning. Is it on top? Is it underneath? Is it inside? Is it outside? All really cool words and vocabulary that have to do with math and science. For spatial reasoning and patterning, for patterning, one of the nicest things you can do is just like clapping activities. So I heard somebody singing bingo with some 2-year-olds the other day. So B-I-N-G-O, B-I-N-G-O, that's a patterning activity. Or if you go, that's a patterning activity. All these things count as science and math kinds of activities.
What about the one with the song with the hands? Open, shut them,
Sure.
them.
Because that's a pattern, right? They're open. What's going to happen next? Get them. So, yeah. Patterning. Great. Thank you. Does anybody else have a pattern song that you clap with, or you do body movements in a specific pattern that you'd like to share?
Some of my babies knows head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. That's a good one. Anybody else?
The teddy bear song, like teddy bear, touch the ground, teddy bear, turn around.
That's
I don't remember the name of it.
Gloria, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, stomp your feet, shout hooray, hooray. Song I really don't care for, but that also has patterning is Tootie Ta. I don't know if you all have heard that one before.
Oh, the itsy bitsy spider.
Okay, itsy bitsy spider. You know, where hands are like this, now how are they gonna move? And these are, you know, just A, B patterns, and that's fine. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yep, great, thank you. So again, if you were with me right now in person, this would be the time we'd go for a walk around the building. Delexis, I can't interpret what you wrote. Can you try again for me or share with me out loud what you're... Delexis?
It was an accident, miss.
Okay, I was like, I can't interpret that. I don't know what to do. All right. If we were in person, now's the time we'd take a nature walk. We're not in person. I want you to imagine instead a nature walk with me real quick. What kinds of things walking around your center outside would we find on a nature walk that we could pick up and carry? What natural things could we find? Sticks. Thank you, Christina.
Rocks.
Leaves. What, Layla?
Rocks.
Thank you. Rocks, sticks, leaves, flowers, pecans. Ooh, I want to go where you are.
Grass.
Grass. Heather, right now, if you went on a nature walk, could find chunks of ice.
Snow, ice, salt.
Which we don't pick up that rock salt stuff because that's not good for them. But yeah, the rest of it. Sticks, acorns. Acorns are great for collecting on a nature walk. Dirt, little chunks of dirt, sure. So if you had children go out on a nature walk with you for a science activity, they could be collecting all these things. What could you do with those things then when you came back to the classroom? You can't let them play with them. Why?
Because they're dirty. You don't know what's on them.
There's that, but a lot of these things are going to be small enough to fit in their hand, right?
Choking hazards.
So the acorns, which are absolutely awesome, the little rocks, the dirt, Well, the dirt's not exactly a choking hazard, right? Unless it's a chunk of it. But a lot of the things that they're able to carry easily are going to be choking hazards. So you're going to
brought my stuff in the classroom, it would all melt.
Yeah, it would right now. Aside from Heather's example of the snow, which none of us can relate to at the moment, what could we do with these acorns, flowers, little sticks, pebbles that they're bringing in with them? We could talk about them, sure. So maybe sit at the table, you know, a small group of 3 or 4 sit at the table, put them on the table in front of you. We could talk about them. We could count them. What kind of lesson could we make with them? Feel them, describe them. Sensory, yep, you could have a sensory lesson there, describing the textures of the different things. You could theoretically have everybody put it in the sensory table and then have one of the teachers guard the sensory table so nobody is eating the things, but instead just experiencing. One thing that's very common for teachers to do after a sensory walk is to get out the glue and paper. And, you know, as you're describing things, sticking them down on the paper, which would also use finer gross motor skills. Thank you, Gloria. It would be using your fine motor skills. You'd be talking about it. So you'd get your sensory, you'd get the descriptions of what you're seeing, which is science. So good activity all the way around. And once it's glued down, you know, you're done talking about, the teacher sets it to the side for it to dry, and then it goes home and it's no longer in your room being a choking hazard. Okay. Just for funsies, since Heather did mention snow, things you can do with snow, you can bring in, you can take the kids outside, grab a bucket, grab some snow, put it in the sensory table. That is a good time right there because the rest of their body's warm and they don't have to wear their gloves touching it in the sensory table. You can also put some different kinds of paint or watercolor paint, you know, in different parts of the snow and let it kind of mush together, and that'd be a lovely sensory and art and science activity. It's all things. Okay. Let's see what else we got here, because we have 30 more official minutes before we get to study hall. I want to make sure I cover everything before we get into it. Okay, for science, we're not going to talk about pre-K guidelines. Instead, we're going to go to that Little Texans Big Futures to find our goals for our science/sensory and our math activities. You can also, this is the link I got for the infant toddler activity, or that webpage talking about the different senses that can be engaged with an infant and toddler garden experience. If that's something that you feel passionately about, you can discuss it with your director and share the resource and say, you know, I think it'd be really useful if we did something like this. This is how we could do it. I need to shut the door because somebody's vacuuming right outside this right now. Okay, that's better. Pardon. All right, so science is all about observing things. And when you're observing things with children, you describe them. So if we think back to that bubble video where the teacher was playing bubbles with the children, she was observing what the children were doing and she was describing it. So she described, oh, I see you're moving your finger in a circular motion around it and popping bubbles. To another child, I see that you're popping bubbles by tapping them. One child, she said, oh, I see that you have put your straw inside the bubble and you are inflating it and making it bigger. Those are all observations, and the teacher should describe those out loud to the children. The teacher should also question things out loud to the children. So I was following around a 3-year-old class once at a nature preschool, and they went on a little hike around the nature preserve, and the teacher was working it, y'all. So she, as she was doing this nature hike with the kids, she was crouching down so like, for example, she's walking, she's leading the group of children. All of a sudden she stops and she says, stop, stop. She gets down on their level on the ground really quietly. She says, I see something over there. Come, I see something over there. Do you see that red bird? That red bird is a cardinal. And oh, what's it doing? Oh, it looks like it's eating something off that bush. What do you think it's eating? Maybe some berries? Okay. And it's hopping. I thought birds flew. Why is it hopping? You know, that kind of thing, questioning while you're observing with children is really powerful. When you make it a habit of describing what you're seeing and talking out loud about your wonderings and your questions while you're observing, children will get in the habit of doing that too. Because you're modeling, you're showing them how they should be interested in the world and things that they should pay attention to. And they're going to try it too. And that's super powerful. You can show them how to safely investigate things. So you could have those little hand lenses to look through. You can bring, like we talked about going on the nature walk, bringing things inside and spreading them out on a table and examining and investigating them. You can, let's say you grew that tomato outside and you bring it inside. Let's investigate the tomato. Let's pull this stem off and look at it. Let's slice it open and see what the insides look like and describe them. Collecting data is something that happens, I think, formally 2 years old and up. And that is when you're like documenting. So you say, oh, I'm going to plant this seed and we're going to make a chart and we're going to count how many days until we see a leaf come up out of the ground and how many days until it reaches 5 inches tall. And maybe compare, let's put one seedling in this window and one seedling over on this side of the room, and let's compare them. And then draw conclusions. Which window is better for the seed to grow? Does anybody have a question about talking through these kinds of science wonderings? Okay, I think everybody went to sleep on me again, but that's all right. We'll just carry on. All right. Thank you, Myra. So for brain research, there is, it's 222 in your book. Let me see. All right. So they do have a chart in your book, page 222. You don't need to look at it right now. It's going to come up in your readings this week. But it talks about research findings for brain research, how cognitive skills are linked both to genetics. So somebody might be a more out-of-the-box thinker just because their family has been historically out-of-the-box thinkers, or due to their environment. So maybe they're an out-of-the-box thinker because their teacher is an out-of-the-box thinker that is talking through her thought processes. They also talk about making connections between things, trying to understand how things are related to each other. So how is this growing tomato plant similar to the other fruits and vegetables we eat during lunchtime? How is it different? Let's make those connections. There are windows of opportunity for children to be super receptive to learning things. For your 0 to 3-year-old children, It's just like one big window. So the more talking and making loving connections with the children you can, the more back and forth receptive contingent responding you do, the better they're going to understand. The more hands-on things you give them to do, the better they're going to be able to make those connections in their brain. It talks about using gestures to accompany learning, talks about technology and being able to rest and how that's important to make those connections and process while you're sleeping. So for technology, according to NAEYC, at least a year or two ago, last time I looked it up, they said that they didn't recommend children under 2 to really be using screens in the classroom. Why? Because they're using them at home. Parents are bringing them in, looking at their phone, watching videos. School time should be used to do those hands-on exploring things that make concrete information available in your head. Okay. Last thing we're going to get into today is the concept of executive function. Now, I don't think you have to know specifically this term executive for the test, but I think you need to know it because you are going to hear it a lot in your lifetime as an instructor. And as you go to trainings, you're going to hear, this is going to help develop the children's executive function. What is executive function? It's the mental ability to make a plan, to focus your attention, to remember instructions, and to get things done. So making a plan, carrying it out, being persistent, thinking things through before you just act upon them, thinking before acting, all this is executive function. So executive function, they have to be able to use their memory. They need to be flexible with their thinking, not just stuck on doing it one right way. So that's the open-ended materials where that comes in. Self-control. We're going to talk about this more as we get into our behavior chapter, but self-control is a big thing to be able to control your impulses and make decisions. You all have probably been driving at one point in your life, and an adult has done something rather foolish in another car in front of you because they had poor impulse control and they weren't using their memory of the rules of the road and making wise decisions. They had poor executive functioning skills. So the more we can build up the next generation, the generation that we can influence in our classroom, they'll be able to regulate their behavior better, control impulses, and think through consequences. They'll be able to manage their time better. They'll be able to stay more organized and be able to follow instructions with more than one step. So you start with your babies with just a one-step instruction. For example, a baby's going to, using their whole arm, because that's how their control is, they're going to tap another baby that's sitting close to them. And the instruction you have for them is gentle touches. And then you would show them how to do a gentle touch. That's a one-step instruction. Later on, as they get into the young toddler classroom, you could do a two-step instruction. You could say, okay, it's time to change your diaper. Put down your blocks and come grab a diaper. Come choose which diaper you're going to use. That's 2 steps. So you can think in your life every day, you follow multi-step instructions as an adult, and it's just building this up slowly. The regions of the brain where self-control develops are immature at birth, and they don't fully mature until the end of adolescence. So, and I'm sure you all have seen, that's kind of what makes teaching in middle school so interesting, because they're still working on their executive functioning skills. All right, So that covers the chapter. We got that chapter done and we finished our fine motor section of the physical chapter. I am going to stop sharing that screen. And I am going to now look in my binder and see what is due this week. I'm going to go on the first page. We are still on page 1. We are in session 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, we're page 2 now, aren't we? Wow. All right, we're in the cognitive chapter, chapter 5, page 2 of this. And it says, things are falling, sorry, y'all. That for this week, we are reading the cognitive chapter. We are creating a science activity or a sensory activity. So if you'll notice that one bullet point says create a science dash or slash sensory. That means it can be either science or sensory or both. Okay, that's not 2 activities, that's 1 activity, science, sensory. The next thing we're doing is we're creating a math activity. Then we're going to do just like we did this week, and we're going to try one of them out in our classroom, and we're going to post the results on our private Facebook group. And then for our writing this week, it's writing about cognitive development in our classroom. I'm now going to turn pages until I get to the science sensory learning experience page, resource collection 2-1. Is anybody not able to find the science dash sensory learning experience paper? Everybody can find it?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Juliet. All right, so we're going to be using that. Turn the page, please. The next one you should see is your mathematics learning experience. And as you look at these 2 pages, you will notice they have the exact same format as the ones you did last week. Do you see that? The only difference is the top where it's labeled science sensory or math. Okay, so you're going to use the same procedure of going to Little Texans, Big Futures. You're going to choose a developmental objective for one of the age groups. Look up the objective and then start your activity around it. Remember, please, that the 3rd page of your agenda or your syllabus has that little chart at the bottom that looks like that for you to document what age level you're doing. Why? Because how many young infant activities do we need?
3.
3, you are correct. How many mobile infant activities do we need together?
3.
3 for everyone.
Thank you. You stopped me from asking the last question with that. All right.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. So 3, 3, 3. So you need to look at your little chart, because I'm sure some of you haven't done this. Turn to your little chart right now and move your finger to the fine motor column. Put a check mark on either young infants, mobile infants, or toddlers to represent which age group you did for your fine motor activity. Go ahead and then move to the next column, the gross motor column. I want you to put a check mark for the age group you did your gross motor activity for. It's really important because we need to make sure that we do 3, 3, and 3 all together. I don't want you to have 7 young infant activities and not pass the course. Let's make sure we get 3, 3, and 3. All right, so now I'm going back to the part of the book that has the science and sensory activity. And I'm going to turn the page and see the mathematics activity. And then the next page is competency statement 2B. That is the one about cognitive development. Just like last week, exactly like last week, we're going to structure it to have 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph has to do with how do you currently in your classroom every day support cognitive development. And you're going to look in your book. Trying to find the best things that you can use as your bullet points to pull from for this. All right, you've got options this week. If you turn to page 236 in your textbook, you will see that it talks about mathematics, and that goes on for 3 pages. And then on 241, it talks about science, and that goes on for 3 pages. So you can use 236 through, and I'll put it in the chat. Thank you, Julia. 236 through 243 has bullet points specific to science and math, or math and science. If you want to look at more general ways to support, let's see if I can find something for that.
Is this for your own classroom or for the age group that you're writing about?
So for the first paragraph, it's how you support it every day in your classroom. So I'm looking because some of you that are in baby classrooms might have a more difficult time with those bullet points. So I'm looking to see what else we could pull from. All right, it looks like you can also, wait 1 minute, there's so much to pull from, y'all. I'm liking page 205, there's a chart. 205 through 206. There's also a chart that talks about developing cognitive skills. And it talks specific for your age group. So if you're in a baby room, that might help you even more with your first paragraph. For young infants, mobile infants, and toddlers, it has it broken up. So going back to competency statement 2B, just like last week, the first paragraph is going to be all about how I support cognitive development in my classroom. Second paragraph, how does my activity, so you need to pick, are you going to do the science and sensory for this writing assignment, or are you going to pick your math activity? You have options, you pick one of them. So you could start out with, in my science and sensory activity, this is how I support cognition, and then you write about it. We're going to do the examples during study hall today. Okay, so study hall is going to start at 12. I'm going to give you all a 10-minute break between now and 12. Those of you that are able to stay on and do the examples with me, get your scratch paper ready. And we're going to get into Little Texans Big Futures, and we're going to do together an example for science and sensory. We're going to do an example for mathematics. We're going to do an example for competency statement 2B. All right, we're going to have a 10-minute break. I guess it's 12 minutes. We're going to have a 12-minute break right now. If you have a question you need to ask me for the first 5 minutes of that break, I will be on, and then I'm going to go potty and get more tea. All right, so everybody have a lovely afternoon. Stay warm. Thank you for joining today. And I'm on here for questions for a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back at noon and we're going to start doing examples together. Thank you, Julia. So anybody have any questions before I leave?
Okay, so you said the first.
All right, for those of you that are still with me, I am sharing my Google search and I'm typing in Little Texans Big Futures. And it comes up littletexans.org. And I'm going to download the guidelines in English. Document.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to look and find cognitive development, which, as we can see, is on page 63. So I'm going to do some scanning, or let's see, maybe I can type in 63 up here. It'll get us close to it. Cognitive development. All right, so for cognitive development, we have some different scenarios. They have exploration and discovery. They have problem solving. Memory. Imitation and make-believe. Let's see, that might be the end of it. Is there any more? Yep, that was it. So I'm gonna go back up and it was on 63. I'm gonna look on page 1 again and see if there's a separate thing for science and sensory. If not, we're gonna have to get cute. Sensory, sensory, sensory. I am not seeing anything specific for sensory. So based off what we see here of cognitive development, we have exploration and discovery, problem solving, memory, imitation. Do any of these look to you like they might be sensory? And sensory might be, let's see, maybe it's under physical because we talked about that being a thing too. No?
I had a question.
Yes.
For the homework, since it's sensory and mathematics, can they be on the same, I guess, topic? Saying, because I want to do nature for sensory, nature walk and how it feels. And can we, I also do that for mathematics. They collect as many objects, like they can get so many leaves and so many rocks.
Sure. Let's look, maybe exploration and discovery would go under science and sensory. That sounds very science and sensory-ish to me. I'm gonna go to page 65 and we'll use those as our science. So who is the person that just asked the question? Are you still there?
Yes.
And who am I talking to?
Amber.
All right. Miss Amber, which age group do you want to do your science for?
I was doing toddlers.
Do you want to do mobile infants or toddlers? Because mobile infants goes up to 18 months.
Toddlers.
Okay. So here is the toddler goals. All right. For your science and sensory, pick one of these toddler goals. Which one do you think would work best?
It's blurry. I can't really see it.
No?
No.
The first one is notice, point at, or talk about animals or insects. The next one is pick up rocks, sticks, or other objects when outdoors. The next one is pour, scoop, and explore sand and water. Match colors and shapes and sort toys or objects that are alike. Show interest in mixing colors of water or paint. Push or pull writing toys.
The picking up sticks.
All right, so I am going to copy that. I don't think it'll let me copy it. That's rude. All right, let me open up the other document. And I'll just do my best to write it down. So pick up. And for the age group, I'm going to put toddlers. And some people were confused this week about what a toddler is. So I'm going to put 18 to 36 months because that's what Little Texans Big Futures considers toddler. All right, for the date of the lesson, I'll put today. It sounded to me like your activity title would be what? Nature walk?
Yes.
Amber, are you able to see the mathematics learning experience I'm typing on?
It still looks blurry.
Is anybody else getting it blurry on their screen? Is it something?
It's just because for a phone user, this is Jasmine speaking, Miss Lillian. If you can maximize the screen, thank you.
Let's see. Is that better? No? Yes?
Yes. No, a little bit more.
A little bit? So looking at our objective of picking up rocks, sticks, or other objects when outdoors, do you all have some ideas of what the step-by-step procedures for that activity would be?
I guess announce the transition that we're going on a nature walk.
Okay, I'm going to put that in introduction.
Okay.
Announce the transition. I'm going to put quotes, we are going on the nature walk. And I might even follow that up with let's collect some what?
Sticks, leaves.
I'm gonna put nature materials because I kind of want to leave it open because you never know what they're going to pick up. And if they pick up something inappropriate, you can, say, oh, that's not a nature material, or, put that down. It's not safe. Let's collect some nature materials outside. All right, so you've announced it's happening and you've told them the objective, let's collect some nature materials outside. What are your procedures? What is the procedure? What do you want them to, how are you going to get them to do it? What are you going to do?
Form a group walk to go outside.
Would you need to do it in small groups? Would you need to do it as one large group? What do you think?
Preferably small.
Be easier, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and on a regular day, how many kiddos are in this room that we're imagining?
In mine, they average about maybe 4 to 6 a day.
Okay. So separate children into their small groups with a teacher, because you can't just send them off on their own, right? After they're in their small groups with the teacher, do we need to do any modeling for them?
Maybe we can give them a bucket or a basket.
Okay.
To collect.
Hand each child a bucket or bag to collect their nature items. Do you want the teacher to demonstrate how to collect an item and put it in the bucket?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, teacher models, and I'm gonna put demonstrate next to that. How to collect stick and place it in her bucket. Okay. Thinking about where you might be able to do this around your school. Are you going to be walking around your school? Are you going to be walking around the play yard? Where will this be happening?
More than likely the play yard.
Okay. Teacher leads small group around play yard to hunt for nature materials. Thinking about your classroom, do you think that it would be useful or not for you to have a marching song or anything like that? Or do you think it would be better for you to just model looking down at the ground and talking about what you see and what you might pick up?
I say both.
Okay.
Yeah, because in mine we already do we're walking, and then they proceed to march, you know, at least beside the teacher or behind the teacher, and then maybe just allowing them to we crouch down, you know, to pick up an item, for example, and then place it in a bucket.
Okay, teacher sings marching song to regroup the children maybe when they start wandering.
Mm-hmm.
And then teacher describes what she sees on the ground and thinks out loud about what she may pick up. Okay, out loud is 2 words, good to know. Thank you, spell check. All right, so what I have now for the procedures are: number 1, separate children into their small groups with a teacher. 2, hand each child a bucket or bag to collect their nature items. 3, teacher models or demonstrates how to collect stick and place it in her bucket. 4, teacher leads a small group around the play yard to hunt for natural materials. 5, teacher sings a marching song to regroup the children. 6, teacher describes what she sees on the ground and thinks out loud about what she may pick up. Okay, how would you close this activity? How would you tie a bow around it and say, okay, it's done, we're all done?
We regroup and go back inside.
All right. Children regroup and return inside with their materials. All right. Question. You have the teacher modeling what they're seeing and what they're thinking about, what they may pick up. Should we put something in there on number 6 about the teacher asking questions about what the children see?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. Teacher asks questions about what the children see and what they're choosing to pick up. Great. All right. For the follow, oh, here, let me go up. Based on what we know now, what materials do you need for this lesson?
Nature.
Sorry. You're not wrong. So you need to make sure you have a playground that has stuff on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Something to collect.
A bucket or a bag.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it, isn't it? Need nature and you need something to carry it around it. All right. I'm now going to go to follow-up. What's a related material I may put in a learning center after this lesson?
Maybe counting, like counting bears.
I'm intrigued. We didn't do anything about counting yet.
I was gonna ask that at the beginning if there needs to be like 5 items, or it just depends on like what collecting, you know, like the bag or the bucket, so that way we can see how many they have.
What you're talking about right now is where your math lesson comes in.
Okay.
Because counting's more traditionally a math thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you've collected these materials outside. You haven't done anything with them yet. It's just picking them up. What could you do in your classroom or playground, whatever? What can you bring in to support just the collecting of those materials and messing around with them?
I guess having them sort out what they collect.
Okay. Some would say sensory bin to explore nature materials. Okay, great. And for toddlers, most of the nature materials outside are choking hazards. However, there are a few things that you could bring in that are not. You could have larger sticks. You could have larger rocks. You could have pine cones. Is there anything else you can think of that'd be a natural material that would be typically found outside that wouldn't be a choking hazard that they could mess with in a sensory table?
I want to say maybe use bigger leaves.
Sure. Okay. So that kind of stuff you could put in a sensory bin and they could explore it with less supervision than just the little pieces they've picked up in the acorns. All right, so a sensory bin. Does anybody else have an idea of something you could put in your classroom related to exploring nature?
Maybe making our own model of nature with the things that we collected outside.
So like by sticking them together in something like glue or clay or something like that?
Ooh.
Okay, so sticking nature materials in glue or clay. Okay. I'm also going to put in here a book about nature. Okay, and that's 3 things. I think that's sufficient. How am I going to evaluate this activity? How will I know the children have met the goal of picking up rocks and sticks? How
I guess observe. Oh, sorry. Yes. Ma'am.
Observation. So you could do either an observation. Did each child pick up sticks and rocks? You could also do a checklist. Did each child pick up sticks and rocks? Okay, so if you're doing a checklist, you could just have, like on the sign-in list for that day, did they do it? Yes or no? And just go down, pardon me, and just go down the list. Are there any adaptations that might have to be done in a toddler classroom for this activity?
The reaching stick, ours has like a dinosaur on it.
Okay, so that keeps them from bending down, right? They can
yes
start it with that. All right, so if a child cannot bend over, use a reaching stick. I'm gonna put next to that like a slash grabbing. All right, any other things you think that would need to be adapted?
Maybe if we have fast walkers and then we have slower walkers, we can separate those.
Okay, put fast walkers in one group and slow walkers in the other. Okay. What comes to my mind is something you might need to adapt is bucket or bag. Some kids can carry a bucket just fine without dumping everything out, and others cannot.
How about like gloves for the ones who have sensory issues?
Sure. Gloves for children with sensory issues. Okay, I think that is sufficient for adaptations. For dual language learners, is there anything you might want to cover?
Maybe asking their families how you say certain words like rocks, sticks, leaves, nature.
Okay. Possible connections to other topics. This is where we can get into your connections to math, to literacy, to music and movement, anything. So I see Gloria put on there sorting out items. So I'm going to put that on there, sorting nature items. I know you had mentioned counting nature items. What else?
Sensory.
Say again.
Sensory.
Okay, sensory. Sensory bin. I like personally for toddler classes to make or to get, what do they call those? It's a reference book, but there's a specific field guide for your playground. Does anybody know what a field guide is? It is a collection of pictures and descriptions of either animals or plants in your area. So it helps you remember the names to things and stuff about them. I especially like just knowing the names. So if you're walking around your playground, wouldn't it be lovely if you knew the names of the trees? And not just, I'm not talking about naming the tree Bob. I mean, this is a red oak. This is a live oak. This is a plane tree. And then maybe names of birds, common birds in the playground. That kind of thing is kind of cool. Does anybody else have a suggestion for a connection to another topic? All right, in that case, I will say that we have completed the science and sensory activity. I'm going to save it. And today I will put it on Facebook for you all to be able to work with as an example. Does anybody have a question on, oh, this is mathematics I opened up. Okay, wait, let me change it to science and sensory.
Yeah, that's why I said counting birds, because I saw mathematics.
You are totally right. I am totally wrong. And it's not the last time that will happen. All right, so let me change it to 2-1.
Are we also going to have this on Facebook to see?
Yeah, I'll put it on Facebook. Sensory. Yes. And that changed it to science and sensory. I'm sorry about that confusion. Where did it go? I don't know. RCNCS files. This is science sensory. Of course, I can't put that dash in there. Maybe we'll put this instead. Great. All right, so that's our science sensory. Let's do the mathematics now. Give me a second, I'm opening it up. Mathematics, M-A-T-H-E-M-A-T-I-C-S. Brilliant. Oops. Okay, and that is RC29. Make sure I change everything on here so don't confuse people more than they might already be. All right, screen share. I am going to now share the Little Texans Big Futures so we can pull another learning objective. All right, so we pulled a science and sensory objective from the cognitive part on exploration and discovery. Now, I'm gonna go down and see problem solving. That might be nice. Yeah, because it talks about numbers and counting here too. All right, brilliant. So are we going to do the same age level for our math activity, or do you all want to do a different age level?
The same one.
All right. So I'm pulling up the toddler math kinds of things. It's on page 68 of Little Texans Big Futures. Our options are ask for the names of new objects or people, climb on something to reach an object, experiment with new toys to see how they work, turn puzzle pieces to complete a puzzle, count objects while pointing to each one, and offer to trade toys with other children.
Count objects.
All right.
That's what I was asking. Can we do like 2-in-1, the sensory and the mathematics?
So you can use the same you can make your math activity a follow-up to your sensory one if you want to. You still have to do 2 activities, but they can be intertwined in a way.
Okay.
So we'll show how to do that. So I'm pulling up the mathematics learning experience. And again, chose to do toddler, which is 18 to 36 months. Date of lesson today, 2/5/22. Right, and let me write down the learning objective we have chosen. Stop. Learning objective. Count objects while pointing to each one and saying the number 1, 2, 1 correspondence. All right, brilliant. So that's it for Little Texans Big Futures. Let me get rid of that. Make this bigger. All right, are you able to see the mathematics learning experience now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right, so from what I understand, you want to use the activity you just did to be the one before this. So they've done their nature walk. They have their bucket of materials they've collected outside. What are you thinking they're going to do with this bucket of stuff?
Have them dump it out on the table. And I guess in a way still sort it out.
Dump it out on table. And where does the counting come in? What's going to happen there?
You can count how many items they collected, or they can sort it out into the different pieces, the different sticks and leaves, and then they can count that as well.
All right, so it sounds like you have a choice. You can either make it a more simple activity and do the counting, or you can make it more complex and do the sorting and then the counting. Which way do you want to go, simple or complex?
We can do simple.
I'm open to either.
Simple.
All right. So again, this is going to be in small groups. I'm going to start maybe with teacher invites small group to table. Question. How are they going to keep their materials to themselves? Is there anything that we could use to keep their materials close to them and so they're not spread all over?
A tray.
Okay. Do you think that would work?
We could put tape down on the table, maybe.
Okay. So it sounds like 2 good ideas here. You could either put tape down and say, this is your box, stay in this box, or you could give them a tray, which would automatically keep things in the box. Either way will work. Which way do you all want to go with it?
The tray.
All right. Teacher invites small group to a table. Teacher hands, or maybe teacher places a tray in front of each child. Teacher prompts children to empty bucket onto tray. Buckets will be placed or will be handed to the teacher. Reason I put that is I'm just imagining, okay, we've got empty buckets and that might be more exciting than the sticks. So hand your bucket to the teacher after you are done with it. Does that work okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So buckets will be handed to the teacher. Teacher models sorting. Oh, we weren't going to do sorting, right? Teacher models counting. Oh, so here's an opportunity for us. We need to figure out. I had said to hand the buckets back, but maybe it would be better. Okay, so I could see this going a couple ways. Maybe instead of pouring the things onto the tray, maybe they reach into their bucket and they count with the teacher and take out one thing at a time and count. Would that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to go backwards now and erase this stuff.
Would it be the same thing too if they still dumped it out, but they counted it as they're putting it into the bucket?
Yeah, you could go. I mean, you've got options here, right? This is an activity we're making up on the fly. So tailor it to how you want it to be. I'm just thinking maybe for one-to-one, it might be interesting to, as a group, pull out one thing at a time and count to 10. Teacher and children pull one item out of their bucket and place on tray. Count out loud number 1. Continue removing one object at a time until you reach number 10. Because I think is 10 a good number or should we go higher? You know the kids in your classroom, what can they count to?
They count up to 10 in mine so far.
Okay. So if that's the number for your classroom, I'd go with it. You could, if you have a goal of reaching 15 or something, maybe you could go up to 15, but whatever it is, tell when to stop, right? So I'm going to say we keep going till we reach number 10. Now, after they've done that, I would like, in my humble opinion, I would like them to just be able to play with the things for a little bit. If that's not something that you think would be a good choice, what are some alternates we could do? So we've reached 10, what do we do now? Do we have them dump everything out and then play with it? Do we have them, because I'm thinking we have the bucket, we have the tray. Do they get to keep both of those and keep moving them back and forth? Or
we can try for them to count on their own.
Say that again?
We can try for them to count on their own.
Okay. So encourage children to count, putting items back in. Okay. And I think that would be it. Encourage them to count, putting them back into the bucket. I think that would be it for a very short activity. Now, for the follow-up, then we could do the children explore the materials they collected. on the tray. So that's one thing we could put. Anything else we could do for a follow-up? You had mentioned sorting, didn't you?
Yes.
And sort the materials. Okay, anything else?
Maybe a book?
Sure. A book on counting?
Yes.
Okay, counting books. Anything else? There doesn't have to be, but is there anything else that you all want to add? Sounds like no. I'm going to go up to the top here because we didn't say how we were going to share with the children what the objective was. Does anybody have an idea of how we could share the objective of count objects while pointing to each one? How would we do that with a toddler? I know at least one is still with me because I can hear you flipping pages.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe to introduce, announce, I guess, I don't know which way to go about it. Announce, let's go dump our buckets and count, or let's go count and dump our buckets.
Yeah, but so I'm trying to think of when I was working with 2-year-olds, and the word dump is very evocative.
Or pour.
So
I just think of spill. Like let's.
So I'm just seeing them, you know, as we're walking to the table, they're like, and it's done. We're dumping it out. So I think I might say something to the effect, because I like what you're saying of let's go count our objects. So I might
let's pull out our objects.
Let's go count our objects. Just make it simple. Let's go count what we collected, our objects. Because you're going to have some kids that have 5 things in their bucket, and you're going to have one kid that has a full bucket. So I'm just thinking if we tell them they're going to pour it out, that's not really what we put in the procedures anymore. We were going to just go up to 10. So I think for mine, that's just all I'm going to put on there. For materials, what do we need for this to happen?
The items collected in the bucket.
Yep,
or bag.
Items collected on Nature Walk, right? On Nature Walk. In the bucket. What else do we need based on the
tray?
Yep, the trays, individual trays. And I think that's it. Do we have an activity title, do you think? What could we call this?
Counting nature, maybe?
I like it. Counting nature. All right, so we have procedures, the follow-up, evaluate. So we are wanting children to count one-to-one correspondence. So as they pull out one thing, they count it. How are we going to evaluate if this happened for each child?
Observing.
It's funny, but infant toddlers, almost all of these are going to have to do with observing, right? So observing individuals and how high can they count? Can they do one-to-one correspondence? And that is when they pull out one stick, do they only count one number for each stick? Adaptations. Do we need any adaptations? And if so, what might that look like? How about for the kid that has 5 things in their bucket? What could we do to meet their needs to count to 10 with everybody else?
I guess if the teacher collected.
Okay, so teacher has additional nature items for children who collected less than 10. Because you can't have them count to 10 if they've only got 2 sticks, right? Anything else we could do as an adaptation? Do we need, maybe for children, we might need to have more space available because they are working with a bucket and a tray. Maybe some children need to stand at the table instead of sit to do this. Okay.
Maybe you can do the floor for more space.
Sure. Use the floor. Great. Our adaptations for dual language, is there anything that we could use for that?
I guess you can ask the parents or the families to pronounce the numbers in their language for you.
1 through 10?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now possible connections to other topics. What are we thinking? What else could we do?
I guess books about nature.
Okay,
or
about nature. One thing that I like as an activity in a toddler classroom is transferring materials. So that's moving
like an arts and crafts.
Sure, arts and crafts. Nature. I'm going to put on here transferring materials from one vessel to another, or from one container to another in sensory table. So you could do that with water, you could do it with sand, but them using spoons and pouring, you know, to transfer things from one to another, I think that's good. Any other ideas?
How many of those do we need?
No specific number.
Okay.
We're just thinking out loud. All right, so we have all the box ticked for this. Every section has something. So I'm going to save it. And those are our 2 examples. I will put them on Facebook today. Now we can work on our written lesson. Let's see, not lesson. What am I trying to say? There it is, CS2B. We make it bigger. Heard somebody do a big sigh. Are you hanging in there? We're almost done. Okay. So for our paragraph 1, we are going to talk about I support children's cognitive in my classroom. Okay, so we're going to give 3 examples of how we support cognitive development in our classroom. Flipping. I'm looking in the book, trying to find some examples now. I'm looking on starting on 227 just for funsies. Let's see, where am I going to pull it from? There's so many options. I'm going to get to where it starts talking about math and science.
So for me, since I work in the mobile infants, but I support children's cognitive development in my classroom by, say, we point to objects and pictures, we name familiar objects, and use quantities related words like more and all gone.
All right, and where did you find that? What page?
206.
206, is that what you said? Yeah. Okay, let me save this page and go to 206. Okay, so 1 minute. You said point to objects and pictures. Give them to me again, I apologize.
Name familiar objects.
And your third?
I want to say recognize his own image in the mirror.
Oops. So those are the ones pulled from the book. Now we need to give a supporting sentence after each of these. So let me see, how can I phrase this for people to help them out? I like that. Let's see. Copy. I think that would help people. All right, so we have our first bullet point. We point to objects and pictures. What's something that we can say to support that sentence? What do we do in our classroom about that? What kinds of objects and pictures do we point to? What times a day? What could we say about it?
We have family pictures that some of my kids point to, and then sometimes we have streamers hanging from the ceiling, the decorations that we use, and they're just in awe sometimes, and they point to it.
Okay, family pictures are posted on the wall. to talk about. And I also hang streamers from the ceiling for pointing, or to encourage pointing, maybe. So we would go back to this bullet point and we would write it as a sentence. And then we'd give the supporting sentence following it, because this is going to be written as a paragraph and not as a bulleted list of stuff. All right, do we have a supporting sentence for naming familiar objects? What kinds of objects do we name? What kind of activities do we do that with?
We have a bucket of balls.
During tummy time, during free choice time, what do you think?
No, for both. If the kid really enjoys the ball, we put it in front of them. But it's like mainly for free.
I put both. I was like, okay, you said both. During tummy or choice time. All right, and the last one you have is recognizing their own image in a mirror. What do we have as a supporting sentence for that?
They when they see themselves, they smile and they start pointing at them, or when they see you behind them.
Where do you have the mirror in your classroom?
Behind our shelf.
Is it on the near the floor?
Yes.
Okay, so we have, go ahead.
Some have that in their cribs.
To look into and make faces. Okay, so that is our example of the framework of paragraph 1. You are going to be writing it as an actual paragraph and not broken down into these sections, but this is to help you set it up so you have all the points. Okay.
Okay.
Now paragraph 2. And which activity are we going to use? Are we going to use the math or the science sensory?
Sensory.
All right. And I'm going to write science sensory. Activity. I support children's cognitive development I'm just going to do that way. I support children's cognitive development. And so we're going to do again the 3 bullet points and supporting sentences. So bullet point from book, supporting sentence. Bullet point from book, supporting sentence. Bullet point from book. All right, I assume some of y'all are looking up some bullet points from the book for this, for our nature walk and collecting things. And that was for toddlers, so we need to look at toddler stuff. I'm gonna actually flip to the science section on 241 and see if I can find anything between 241 and 243 that I might be able to use. Let's see. I like this. Well, we didn't mention it though. I don't want to just make stuff up. let's see. So on the top of 242, it says offer sensory experiences with natural substances. And I think that collection activity would count for that. So I'm gonna put this bullet point, offer sensory experiences with natural. Okay. What else can we find that would be a bullet point to support our science and sensory activity we created together? Oh, here we go. Bullet point from book. Provide an environment that invites exploration. What else? Oh, on 243, it says take children on nature walks. Boom. Spelled pine cones wrong, sorry. Okay. I assume some of you are still here with me. Based off this first bullet point, offer sensory experiences with natural substances. What supporting sentence could we offer based on our activity of the nature walk?
Repeat that one more time, Miss Lillian.
So here's our bullet point, offer sensory experiences with natural substances. I'm saying that our natural substances were like the sticks and rocks, right?
Yes, ma'am.
How could we support that here? Because we're talking about the collecting of the rocks and sticks and nature materials activity.
I guess in a way that how you said it, I allow the children to experience collecting substances outside from our nature walks.
Okay, allow the children to pick up and collect nature materials during our nature walk outside. Okay, the second bullet point is provide an environment that invites exploration. I'll have a whack at that one. Supporting sentence. Outdoor play yard has trees and gardens for children to explore. Okay, and then the third one, take children on a nature walk and have them collect leaves, pine cones, acorns. What could we do as a supporting sentence for that? Because that's pretty much what we did, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Ideas?
Shoot.
Let me start it. Our nature walk focused on collecting natural materials and carrying them in a bucket. Boom. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So for each one of these little bullet points, we have a supporting sentence. Does anybody have a question about how I structured this? You do know that we're not going to include like this bullet point from the book and supporting sentence work, you know, actual stuff. We're going to take that out and write it like we're writing a letter to somebody.
Got you. Do you mind scrolling back down to supporting sentence for number 2? Thank you, ma'am.
And I am going to include this. I'll put it on Facebook as well. You may go down for the third one.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, going down.
Thank you.
And that's it. So you all need to have a science activity or science/sensory activity, a math activity, and then the CS2B turned into me via email, and then try out one of the things you create with your kiddos. Facebook.
Thank you so much.
Any questions, comments? You two stuck it out to the end. I'm impressed.
We try.
That's it.